Hello, everyone. My name is Adrian, as you know, and I have my good friend here, Damon here. We'd like to announce that we are starting a new segment for our Habs Tonight channel here. This will be called Coast to Coast. Um, Pretty much what this will be entailing is we're going to be, discussing Habs news, obviously Habs Tonight, our channel, our team. We're going to be discussing all the latest Habs news, and we're also going to go around the league and talk about other news around the league and, in the hockey world. So, yeah, I'm really excited to get started. David and I have been pretty excited to get this project going for a bit. Very thankful for, the channel for letting us have this opportunity. So, Damon, how are you doing, man?
Doing good. You, Adrian? Your day was good?
I'm good. Yeah, good. Pretty good for a Monday. I can't complain. Pretty fired up, to get this little segment going. Episode 1. So yeah, let's go right into the mix here. We're gonna go in with the Habs' recent performance. Um, as a lot of us know, the Habs have been hit by the injury bug the last couple of months. It started. I'm gonna go back to maybe December. I'm gonna say with the Sean Monahan injury. That was a very devastating injury for the team. He's obviously become a very important player. He's really cemented his role with the team. Now Caden Goolie's one of the top players too that's out right now. So it's been a little bit of a tough go for them lately. Goaltending's been a little shaky at times, and their last 10 games, their record is 3-7. So it's a little bit shaky. And Damon, what's your take on that?
Yeah, my take with this is I kind of was expecting this eventually to happen with so many injuries, and also this event like these injuries. I think it goes to show how valuable of a member of the Habs Sean Monahan is to us, because I noticed with Sean Monahan, Nick Suzuki's been over a point per game, but in his last 13 games, he's only had 7 points. But I just want to give credit, of course, to Samuel Montembeault, who played his out of his mind yesterday against the Rangers, a hard-fought 2-1 win. But overall, it's just not really too surprising to see that we're going through this right now, because also I found in past years, I don't know if you found this as well, Adrian, that usually around this December to New Year's time, the Habs have always seemed to face a lot of adversity around this time of year. I don't know how you feel about it, but let's hear it.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. I find like the first couple of months first couple of months of the season is very tough because it's new, a lot of new faces on the team, and everyone wants to gel and mesh properly. And yeah, I mean, I find also Montreal's had a lot of problems with injuries just overall the past few seasons. I think it's hard though with how fast the game is though. Um, it just sucks because a few months ago it was looking like this team was could have been making a push for a wild card spot, and the ball was in their court, right? And then the injuries started piling up, and like we were saying about Sean Monahan, he's really become again a very very important player for this team. He's very responsible defensively, and obviously he's put up a lot of points too. So, and obviously losing Caden Gooley is a tough one. They had David Savard out for a while too. Thank God he's back. And it's just tough, man. There's just nothing you can really do. Obviously, Brendan Gallagher has been in and out of the lineup for a bit too. Hate to see what he's been going through with a lower body injury. He was out for quite a while, came back against the Capitals and re-injured the same part of his body, and he's out again. It's really tough to see.
I agree, especially with Brendan Gallagher. He has had such a long injury history of injuries, and I remember from 2015 to 2017. I remember that left hand of his, particularly his left hand, got 2 direct slap shots from from 2 players who had some of the hardest shots in the NHL. I remember Johnny Boychuk in 2015.
Yep.
Gallagher was blocking a shot and it hit him right in the hand, and then in 2017, Gallagher accidentally blocked Weber's shot in a game against Dallas, which we won. And I remember Pacioretty made Montreal Canadiens history that game because he scored his 7th overtime goal for Canadiens captain around that time. But with Brendan Gallagher, it's just such a unique case the way I see it because he of course has that big $6.5 million contract, but with the way the team is going and all of his injuries, and he even said it that last summer that he needs a full summer of recovery. Sometimes I'm kind of wondering about his injury history, and I wonder if he needs more than just a full summer to recover because whenever he seems to play, they're always like he looks good when he's fully healthy, but something always seems to come up, and I'm just hoping for the best of his health.
Yeah, I agree, Damon. It's really tough because yeah, maybe I think we even talked about this the team the we were saying maybe LTIR him for, you know, as long as he needs to be, you know, to recover fully, right? Um and you got to I think we were talking about this before we hopped on the show here. Um this is probably a discussion that, you know, maybe people have been having maybe in the organization, you know, the team, or maybe even himself. Like, you know, how much longer do you think he has left? You know, how much does he have left in the tank? Because, you know, um, he's getting older. The game's getting faster. We were saying, and like, you know, and he's a guy too who will put his body on the line. You know, he'll just lay it all on the line for his team. And you know, just you just got to think like how much longer does he have? And you know, he's been pretty banged up because again, he plays hard and he does everything right. So, Damon, what do you think of that?
Oh yeah, like the way I actually see it is like Brendan Gallagher. I feel that his regression kind of started somewhere during the 2021 playoffs. I don't know if you agree with that because when you during the 2021 season when we had the All Canadian North Division, I remember he was just under a point per game for the Habs, and then I remember he got injured, and then he came back just in time for the playoffs. And then after we were eliminated in the Stanley Cup Finals, we noticed his lack of production, but he still had good playoffs because he kept the other team's top players off the board. And the other thing I found that was really interesting is that when they released the injuries that came out, a lot of players from that playoff run had maybe broken hands, like they had like all those typical injuries. Just one of them, Brendan Gallagher, had a groin injury and more, but we don't know what that more is. But I wonder, like, I'm starting to wonder more what it is because ever since then, I don't know if you, I don't know if you agree with this, Adrian, but I feel like he just hasn't been the same. Like he just hasn't. I feel like the skating, like you can tell there's 200% he's giving every night when he's out there, but it just doesn't look the same as what it was in 2018-19 when I think he had his peak season. How do you feel about it, Adrian?
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember I think consecutive years he scored 30 goals, like going back to those years you were saying, right? And yeah, I think, you know, obviously like we've been saying, like, you know, he puts in you know, 200% every night, and we're not saying that he's not trying. It's just more so, you know, he's getting older as a player, and you know, the league's getting younger and faster, right? So I think that just plays an impact in all of that. And yeah, I've seen a little bit of regression in his game, but regardless of that, personally, I still love having him in the lineup because again, he just, like I said earlier, he just lays it all on the line, and he's just for the boys, you know, like he
Yeah,
just does it all. And yeah, he's just for the boys, and he's a heart and soul player. And I'm happy they gave him an A also in the offseason. Got to talk about that too. He got the assistant captain in the offseason. I'm very happy they gave it to him. He obviously is you know, been there for so long, and you know, put in his years of service, and he totally deserves it. And he's definitely um, established himself as a good leader too. So yeah.
I agree. That's a good point you brought up about Brendan Gallagher and being leader and also being for the boys. Now I'm like everyone in that locker room like loves Brendan Gallagher from what I know, and he's like that one teammate that every team needs, and you always like love to have him, but he's the one player you hate to play against. So I was also thinking about this recently and more about Brendan Gallagher and his body not being able to keep up. I noticed for a lot of players who go through injuries, like a lot of them typically reinvent their games, and I'm probably going to be throwing you on the spot a bit, but is there ways you think he can reinvent his game whatsoever? Because I was thinking a bit more of a defensively, like he's still good defensively, but a bit more of a defensive ended player who doesn't score as many goals. Like there's not really a comparison I can come up with, but I'm just wondering if you think there's like ways that maybe he could reinvent his game.
Ooh, that's a good question. You know, thinking about it, like, maybe he can kind of readjust his game to, more of like a maybe a checking line forward, where he's, again, like you're saying, you're more playing more on the defensive side of the puck. Um, I mean, that's a tough that's a good question, because, like, he has the reputation of how he plays, right? And how he's just, he's in front of the net, like he has an office there, right? So I mean, I think the coaching staff, like, I think Martin St. Louis would probably want him to, like, continue, playing the way he is, right? But obviously he's gotta, be careful with, the injuries and stuff. But yeah, that's I think maybe he could readjust his game, because I know, like, a couple of years ago, I'm thinking of Zdeno Chara. I know he was a guy who kind of adjusted his game to, like, the modern NHL, because he was getting older and slower, and he was looking pretty good for a while near the end of his career. I know when Boston made the finals in 2019, he was playing some pretty good hockey still. So, but to answer that question about Gallagher, I think he's going to keep doing what he's doing. Maybe, as the years go on, you might see him maybe slowly change his game and adjust his game to, maybe adjust to a different role, maybe. But for now, I think he'll probably still be playing the same galley. So
Yeah, like he's one of those players that doesn't strike me as the type of player who plays like Galley's always going to be Galley. But also, I want to mention Erik Karlsson's name, because Erik Karlsson's been through so many injuries throughout his career, and especially that
oh yeah,
2017 playoff run that the Sens had. Now, and the way he's playing season, it's probably not sustainable for the rest of that contract, which is kind of my hot take. Like, I don't think he's going to play like the same way he's playing right now for that contract. But I've been thinking is if like I've been saying before, like Gallagher, if he can find some sort of way, like if Erik Karlsson can do that, I think there's some sort of hope. Do you agree with me on that, Adrian?
yeah. I that's a good point, actually, because yeah, Erik Karlsson is, yeah, way different player than he's sorry, way different player this year than he's been maybe the last 3-4 seasons, right? So he's I think, I mean, for, they're professionals, anything's possible, right? They can adjust the game, they can adjust their game anytime, right? It's I that's a good question, actually. I'm on the spot now. um, but yeah, man, I just think I really hope Galley just continues, grinding through, and hopefully, they don't rush him, and they just give him the time he needs to recover, even if he needs, like, you know half a season to retire. Sorry, to recover. Sorry, half a season to recover.
That's
Right?
okay.
If he needs all that, then let him do what he's let him do it, right? And even, or even, like, what the Habs did with, with Carey Price, pretty much the whole season on the LTIR. If you have to do it, let it happen, right? As long as, and he's got to think about, his well-being too, right? As a human, right? Because after hockey, right, you don't want to be feeling like nagging injuries, right? So
Yeah. That's a good point you bring up, Adrian. And also, there was one other thing I wanted to mention. Speaking of injuries, I remember like last year when Ben Sherratt got injured. I remember it was February time. I remember he had an injury that he could play through, but Kent Hughes said like I'm going to trade you soon, and we all knew that he was getting traded. And he said like to anyone who's injured, like you can take all the time you need. So I think that goes and reinforces the point that Brendan Gallagher just needs to take as much time as he needs. And also, I think this organization will be open to it. 'Cause I remember Montembeault played through that. I don't know if it was a broken or fractured hand last year,
oh my
but
gosh, I didn't know that.
it was because
Wow.
like I remember like Primo wasn't playing the greatest up here, but Montembeault pretty much I guess he sucked on a bit of stick, as Carey Price would say in his last press conference. He didn't just fought through the pain, and then he earned himself that contract. So yeah, like Montembeault got rewarded with that, but I think with Brendan Gallagher, like and all those guys that are injured, even Caden Gooley this year, if he needs like the rest of the season off, I just think these guys, since we're not making the playoffs from how it looks, just take whatever time you need off and then just recover and relax is the way I see it.
Yeah, I agree, man. Honestly, like, we're in the bottom 10 in overall league standings, right? Um, you know, just if they need time to recover, just let them take the time. You know, they're not. they're not trying to make the playoffs now. Like it is what it is, right? And I think letting them heal and take the time to heal will be better for them long term, right? Instead of rushing them to come back, and maybe their ability kind of declines a tiny bit, right? Like going back to like here's an example like Eric Carlson, right, where he had that Achilles injury 10 years ago, and Achilles injury takes like almost a year, pretty much a year to recover. I played hockey with a guy that tore both of his Achilles like both 1 year after the other. Yeah, and we were playing like and like I was playing with him. It was tough, man. Like it takes literally over a year to recover. So, and Carlson came back in like maybe 3-4 months, and even everyone was like questioning that, right? Even I was questioning that. I'm like that's like a year long injury, right? So, going back to it, just let them heal, take the time. I know I just keep saying it, but that's the best way for the organization and for the player itself too.
I agree, and also sometimes with losing a bit and also just letting some of your best players heal up, it gives us a better chance of landing the guy who I absolutely adore, Connor Bedard.
Oh, we
What
all
do you think
love
our
him.
chances are of landing him, Adrian?
Oh man, like I was telling you too, I was checking the standings before, while I was heading to work this morning, and honestly, man, like I personally, again, my heart says yeah, like let's go and get him, and hopefully we can. But man, like Anaheim, Chicago, and Columbus are just really bad. I don't know if we can like be that bad. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, there is a lottery, right? And obviously, with the lottery, gives everyone a little bit more of a chance. But man, those teams are like really shit. So honestly, like, I don't know. Honestly, if we don't get him and we get, because it's apparent, like from what I've heard, it's a really deep draft this year. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
It
I've
is
heard
very
it's
deep, yeah. Like the
yeah.
top five are
So
pretty much what Slough would have been. Like Slough probably wouldn't have gone first overall if it was, or gone in the top
oh,
five maybe. Like that's how good it is this year.
oh really? Yeah, it's you know what? If they get something in the top 10, I'll be happy. Excuse me. Personally, I'm really happy with the progress the team has made so far. Just in the what almost year and a half of the new regime, I'm really happy with the steps they've made. So I have full trust in Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes. They seem to be just again everything so far just seems to be working. Like every trade they make, like even like they had a great draft last year. Like it's just everything seems to be clicking. Like everything they do. So I have full trust in them that they'll pick the regardless of where they are in the draft. I think they'll pick the right player for the franchise.
I agree. Are there any players that stand out to you in the top 10? Because right now, as it stands with Florida's current spot, we have two top 10 picks. Is there any players like that in particular stand out to you? Because right now, I'm
Ooh.
kind of interested in Dvorsky, the Slovakian center, who I think would be a good number two seed behind Nick Suzuki. And then I'm also have a bit of interest in Braden Yeager, who's a versatile forward in the for the Moose Jaw Warriors. Who stands out to you, Adrian?
I've heard those two kids too. They're pretty good from what I've heard. Adam Fantilli is probably going to be top 10 pick. He again I got a chance to really get a glimpse of him during the World Juniors, and man, he's got it. Also that Michkov kid from Russia is really
Ooh.
good too. He would be nice, but again, there depends where the Habs go. Where depends where they end up going in the draft. We'll see, but those guys have really stuck out. It's definitely again, like you were saying, very deep draft. So it's definitely a good year to try and make the organization better.
Yeah, and also that you mentioned Michkov, something interesting I mentioned. Like it will need to win one of the two lotteries to get Fantilli, so it would be a pipe dream like to happen, but I'm not sure if it will. But when it comes to Michkov, he's fallen off a bit in the scouting because the thing is, scouts apparently aren't allowed, from my understanding, aren't really allowed in Russia to go over and see the games there because of
Mm,
the ongoing situation there.
yeah, that
So
makes
I
sense.
think it may seem like a gamble, but I think if we can somehow find a way to draft him, he will look like a steal for us if we do. And actually, this is something we want to do. We want to have a little fun here and pull up a little, let's do a little tankathon just for the fun of it. We're in a
Sure.
similar lottery right
Oh,
here.
there we go.
Let's
See,
see who wins it the
Montreal's got
first time.
2 picks there. Nice.
Here we got Fantilli.
Oh,
Let's try another one. Fell down to 11. Okay.
7th. Holy. Then 11. Wow, that's bad.
Let's see if we can get the top 2 picks or get at least a first overall with this. And there you go. We got the first
There
overall
we
pick.
go. Yeah. Imagine, oh my God. Imagine if that happens again. Oh my God. That was like the one year when Chicago drafted Patrick Kane. I don't even think they were in the bottom 5, if I'm correct. And they somehow were still able to get him, right? So you never know. There's always like those little sliver chances of of it happening. You just never know. That's why I personally I do like the draft lottery in like the NHL, but also like in the other sports too. Like I'm pretty sure like the NBA does it, and like it's makes it interesting, right? Like I know the NFL, it's like whatever the standings are and that's it. But draft lottery definitely makes it more interesting. Gets your blood going and gets your anxiety up and
Yeah, we all know last year we saw that video where my body left my soul when we got the first overall pick.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I think I had surgery last year. You guys knew. And I was in the hospital. I was waiting to get surgery, and I was on my phone watching the live stream, and I saw you guys all celebrating, and I was watching it. I had a little TV there, and I had it on TSN, and like I literally got up from the hospital bed. I was like, "Yeah, let's fucking go!" Like right in the middle of the hospital. It was great.
Oh my God! Just imagine if they were operating on you at the time and you jumped out, like yeah, and then that would be a nightmare.
I was. Oh God, that'd be scary. I remember. Yeah, I was. It was like 5:30, 6 o'clock. I remember when the draft lottery happened that night, and yeah, I didn't go in until like 8:30, 9 o'clock, and there was a hockey game on. I think I was watching the Kings and Oilers. Kings and Oilers. That series was still going on. I think it was Game 6, and man, that
That
was a
was a
great
good
game.
series.
Oh, that was a good series. Wow, that Game 6 was just back and forth. I remember like boom, boom, boom. It was like scoring goals left, right, and center. It was great. Playoffs were good last year.
Yeah. I think that the playoffs like last year, I truly do miss them. Like, and also
Mhm.
sometimes it's just fun to watch, even when your team is not in them. So you don't have to really a real bias or like a real team you have to cheer for. You can just sit down, just enjoy some hockey, and you got to see the stories that come out of it. It's always one of the nicest feelings as a sports fan.
Oh, totally agree, man. Like, I mean, yeah, like the Habs had a very tough season last year. From being in the finals one season to being last place in the league the next, right? Like that's pretty crazy. But it was still cool. Again, seeing Colorado win the Stanley Cup, and just there was so much happening in the playoffs last year. It was great. Like you're saying, it was great. Like Edmonton, like and McDavid going to the third round was like something else. And um, even just like that Calgary series, I was like, oh yeah, Calgary's got this. This is a wrap, right? I think maybe 5-6 games, and my God, Connor McDavid just like schooled them so bad. It was ridiculous.
It was, yeah. But I still think to this day that Blake Coleman goal is a hot take. Yeah, I don't think it was really distinct kicking motion because I think the puck was already going in and he was in Blake Coleman was already being pushed in by Cody Ceci. So I think that's a big, not really a
Yeah,
big if and but I still think that goal should have counted. We still should have had at least another game of that series.
totally agree. Yeah, that goal was a little bit iffy. I don't think it was a kicking motion, like you said. He was being pushed in. It was not much he could have done, right? So yeah.
Yeah. And this is a topic we have to talk about. This team has been giving us so much content for this video. We could probably do a whole hour segment on this team, the Vancouver Canucks.
Oh geez. Oh my God. Where do we start? Damon?
Do you want to start with JT Miller?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Like I'm gonna say exactly 2 weeks ago, I think it was. He was created a lot of headlines with his comments about not taking accountability for his struggling play the last few months. Saying how he wasn't cheating in his game anymore. Like something like crazy like that. Like I'm not cheating like I was. Like little cutting corners, I guess, here and there. And you can see like he's visibly frustrated, like the delay of like the delayed penalty when the goalie didn't go to the bench and he was like crushing his like stick on the crossbar. And I was like, oh my god, what's going on with this guy? Um, again, I it's hard to say. I think he personally is just he's frustrated with he's been there for what 3 years, 4 seasons now.
Yeah, since
It
1920.
seems to just yeah, exactly right. So it just seems to be the same script with the Canucks. Like they're just mid. Like I don't know, like all due respect to them, but they're just mid. Like they had a chance during the bubble playoffs, like played some good hockey. I personally enjoyed watching them, do what they did in the bubble, but like they're just so like mid. I don't know how else to say it. Like I don't like they he I mean a lot of people are saying like JT Miller doesn't care anymore because he got the bag and he's signed long term going into next year. That's a legitimate argument maybe, but one thing that the founder of our channel here, Dale Weiss, has said too is like you don't know what's going on with the players like away from the rink. There could be things going on in his personal life that like we have no idea about, right? Like it's like I don't know, like I don't know JT Miller personally, like none of us do, right? Like could be something going on in his personal life. you know there's a lot of things that happen, right? And like I remember hearing a story on Twitter a few months ago. Apparently he was out somewhere with his family at like a pumpkin patch or something, and like people were heckling him because the Vancouver wasn't playing well, and obviously he's one of the highest paid players in the team, so he's gonna get it. And I felt bad from there because like he's trying to spend some time with his family, have a day off from you know hockey, just his and he had to deal with that. So it's a lot of factors. I think there's just a lot of animosity built up within that team. And yeah, Damon, I want to hear your take on the whole
Yeah,
JT Miller
I'm
thing. And if you want to say more, yeah, go ahead.
I think like you hit the like you hit the spot right with what you said, and I think a lot of it also circles back to what Dale said about you don't always know what's going on in the player's personal life. But I don't agree with the way, like you said, Miller's been handling himself on the ice. What kind of is bugs me is when I don't remember which game it was. I remember Spencer Martin was waiting to go to the bench, and then Bruce Boudreau said, "Wait until we have possession in the offensive zone, then you come to the bench." And then JT Miller is telling him to go. And then he didn't take responsibility. He should have. JT Miller should have said, "You know what? I should have listened to Bruce Boudreau and let him handle that situation because he's a coach." He's just and JT Miller has a letter on his jersey. You need more out of him, in my opinion. But like the stuff where people are heckling him in the streets, like there's a fine line that that fans shouldn't be crossing, because I think fans have the right to call out players after bad games, or they're not performing, or they're not working hard. Like we then hear like I'm going to be honest, like I've called out Hoffman, Armia, and those kind of guys because I feel and I know that they're not playing up to the standards that they are capable of playing up to. But if you're going in public and heckling these people, like what else? Like why are you doing that? It just bothers me that people would be doing that. But Miller, like that quote I want to touch on, which feels so weird. I'd like to say my lack of production is a compliment to me not cheating the game and playing the right way.
Yep, that was it.
Yeah, that was the quote. And the thing is I'm not like I'm a stats person, but I don't like live and die by stats. But his defensive
Mhm.
stats aren't as good as they were last year. Last year he was a plus 15, but so far at this point in the season, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think he's like a minus 15. I know he's not a plus
Oof.
player.
I'm gonna check it out right now because I looked at his stats because I was thinking about this topic the other day, right? And um, I was looking at his stats, like his overall like goals and assists are not like completely terrible. Like he has, so let me see here. JT Miller, he has, oh no, that's his game log. So if you want to go, so yeah, 17 goals, 21 assists, you got 38 points in 43 games, which is pretty stellar, right?
Yeah.
But like minus 13, yeah. Like I noticed too, like he's been turning over the puck a lot this year. I think that's been his biggest issue, is turning the puck over in his own end. It's cost them a lot of goals. So that's where I think why he's like facing the heat right now. It's because I noticed that his he's got again turning over the puck at his end, but those are not bad numbers. But I don't know, man. I personally think the Canucks, and we talked about this before we hopped on here too. The Canucks, excuse me, should have done the rebuilds. Should have done a rebuild like almost 9 years ago. After that bad season they had with Tortorella, and they traded Luongo and like that whole like disaster like year, right? And they traded Kessler in the offseason. Like that for me, like when they traded Kessler back then, I'm like, okay, this team is probably going to go into a rebuild, clean the slate, start new, but they just kept it the same, right? Like I don't know, they just should have done it a long time ago, but I don't know what this team.
Yeah, same here.
They're just terrible.
Yeah, also like that, or like that time when we thought they'd start the rebuild. Also, they traded the wrong prospect when it came to that whole Eric Gudbranson trade, which kind of blew up in their face, to put it nicely. I
Yeah.
remember they had the choice to either trade Jake Virtanen, who's no longer in the league anymore, or they had the choice to trade Jared McCann, who's tearing it up currently for the Seattle Kraken, and they chose to trade
Oh,
Jared McCann, and that is something that blew up in their face. But also, something I need to vent a little bit about is Francesco Aquilini and his management of that team. Like, don't get me wrong, like the owner can do what they want with the team, but when it comes to an
yeah.
owner making hockey decisions when he's not the most qualified person in the room, that is something I really do not think should be happening in professional sports. And I'm seeing this happen firsthand with my favorite soccer team, Chelsea. I just need to vent on that a bit as well. Our owner, Todd Boehly, owns the Dodgers and the LA Lakers, which are both very successful franchises in their respective leagues. And he's fired a lot of the staff that work at Chelsea who are responsible for our transfers and for our development of young soccer players. And he's just throwing money around, stupid amounts of money at players that don't either fit the team or just wants to hijack signings. Like Mudryk, he's a Ukrainian player or forward that played for Shakhtar. And he just threw 100 million at him when we don't even need him. We have so many players who play the wing. We have Pulisic, we have Sterling. I know we have a lot of injuries, but it just doesn't make sense when
Mhm.
owners do this kind of stuff. Owners just need to stay in their lane, and then all they should be doing is what I think Molson is doing well, is just writing checks and making sure that all the right people are in charge. What do you think about it, Adrian?
Yeah, like I'm with you on that, man. Like again, there are a very small percentage of owners in the sports world that are, that make good sports decisions, right? Um, I mean, I don't know if a lot of people would agree with me on this, but like here's a very polarizing example, but like Jerry Jones with the Dallas Cowboys, right? He's like very like hit or miss. Like he's made some good choices for the roster, but some very bad ones, right? But personally, I think owners should just again look over the team, make sure that things are running efficiently, like that the good like a good product is being put on the ice, the fields, you name it, whatever it is. Um, and again, like let the qualified people run the team. The ones that have been in like hockey, hockey management, for example, right? Like like Jim Rutherford is a guy who's won back-to-back Stanley Cups with Pittsburgh, and even guys before him that Aquilini's had to work with, right? Like just let them let them do their thing. Let them manage the team. Obviously, like there's nothing wrong with like you're in a position of authority. There's nothing wrong with checking in and seeing what's going on, but I don't know. I just don't think a lot of the owners should be making player personnel decisions. But it's always good to have someone in between. Like again a president of hockey ops or a GM or someone like that, right?
And this is a good point here. The Zen Relax
Yeah.
Unwind brought up here. I think that Molson said on the Knuckles podcast that he's really proud about how they are how they're doing the current rebuild. It says a lot about the new regime is running things. And also, yeah, like the
Mhm.
transparency thing. There needs to be a lot more transparency. And I remember Molson actually said on that episode of the Knuckles podcast that around the 2016-17 time, him and Bergevin were in communication, and Bergevin was thinking about a rebuild or a retool, but he never really did it transparent in a transparent way. And he said, like looking back, that he thinks that they should have did something similar to what Gorton did in New York when they announced that they were going to do the rebuild.
Agreed, man. Yeah, looking back at that year too, like they did not have much. Like they were pretty thin on up front. Like I mean, obviously Carey Price was Carey Price. You know, they had Shea Weber's first year there, but yeah, no, I should have. It's good that things are looking up. Like I said earlier in the show, like it's good that things are looking up for the team, and obviously it's good that the owner of the team has confidence in the management team. That's great. It's great stuff.
Yeah. And also, speaking of the Canucks, did you also hear about the Tanner Pearson situation?
Yes, I did. You texted me about it on Saturday, and I actually again had no clue, and then I did some research, and so he had I think it was like a upper body injury. It was like a hand or a wrist or something. If
Yeah,
I'm correct, correct me if I'm wrong.
it was the
And
hand. Yeah,
yes, so yeah, apparently Quinn Hughes spoke out and said that it was handled really bad. So it's just man, the Canucks is just feels like it's just one thing after the other. I find the Canucks this year are like so highly scrutinized by the media, just like how the Lakers are. Like they're not obviously. Let me make this clear though. They're not on the same like pedestal. Like the Lakers are like you said earlier, one of like the most, you know, like successful franchises in sports history, right? But I think more in just like the media scrutiny that they're both receiving, it's like every day these two teams are in the news for something, right? They seem like a pretty easy target. So it's a shame. It's a shame. Like again, like the Canucks seem like a pretty held together franchise not so long ago in the 2010 2011 when they were in the finals, and you know things were looking good. They had a great roster and like they were run really well. Like again, Alain Vigneault was a great coach. They just had it right, and after that they've just slowly like just fallen off, and it's really
I
sad to
agree.
see.
Yeah, also, there's this comment here which I think is interesting to talk about. What's
Oh,
happening with Boeser, given now that Pearson's out? Think they still deal him?
that's a
I
good
think they do.
question.
That's
Yeah, I think so too. I think they still trade him. uh I mean, Jim Rutherford had a press conference today, and basically it said that they're tanking this year because they want Connor Bedard. He just full out said it. So excuse me. Yeah, I think they're gonna trade him. I think you get a pretty decent value from him. I don't know his trade market right now. I don't want to like start saying things because I personally don't know his trade value or his trade market right now. But I would assume you're probably going to get a draft pick and a good prospect because Brock Besser has been a very serviceable player for a while, right? And obviously he's got a great skill set. I take him on my team any day of the week.
same here. Yeah, and also his shot is something that is absolutely
Oh,
unreal. And I think that this might be a hot take, but I think depending on the price, if the price is right, the Habs, if they can clear up some cap space, should try to make a run for him. Because look at how a lot of these players have done under Marty. And if he's one of those players that I think can adjust really well to concepts, and he creates more than he gives up on the ice. I feel if it's Marty's style of hockey.
yeah, that's I think that's a fair take. If the price is right for him, um, why not? Like why not try and get him? Very serviceable player, and yeah, his skill set is could fit in well with the young team that they have now, right? And again, hopefully his asking price isn't too high, and see what they can do.
I agree. And also, I remember you were telling me that I think last weekend or 2 weekends ago was you were at the Laval versus the Marlies. How did that game go? And what did you see out of Laval, and who stood out to you?
Yeah, so yeah, I was at the Laval. Some people may know I'm from Toronto. I live in a Toronto suburb, so can't really catch the games at the Pepsi Colisée, I think they call it in Laval.
I think so.
Uh, um, and so I had to go to the Coca-Cola Coliseum, which is still fine. I still got to see the Laval Rocket in action against the Marlies. It was a good game. They outshot them like 54-20. It was insane. They looked really good. They just couldn't. Man, Joseph Woll on the Marlies is just was just stellar, just stopping everything. Um, they had a ton of power plays. They just couldn't really get much. Like they got good puck movement. They were like I think it was Schumann. How do you pronounce his
Schuneman.
name? Schumann.
Schuneman.
I feel like Don Cherry there can't pronounce names.
Yeah.
But anyways, he looked great on the power play. Rem Pitlick, man, he was just blowing by guys, man. He was just breezing by players. Um, Alex Belzil is a. I didn't really know like much about him. Like he played a few games with the Habs here and there. Um, he's a great leader. He's a good captain. I just saw him before every face-off. He's like directing traffic. He's like, you got to go here. Like, he's like directing traffic. I'm like, I like that. Like he's a good captain. And he was playing pretty good too. Raphael Harvey Pinard too, another player, just skates like the wind and like just fast and just puts 110%. Overall, they played a pretty good game. Again, they just again, I don't want to be mean or anything, but like like the goaltending just wasn't great. Like Kevin Poulin like didn't really have a good game, but like I think they have a pretty good team. They played really well that game. Aside the fact, even though they lost, they played really really good. Lots of like again, really fast on the puck. I like what I saw. Like for I know they're not having the greatest season right now. After like last year when they went to the conference final and stuff like that. But I liked what I saw. They have a good team. They have some good young players that can maybe be serviceable players for the Habs one day. So I liked what I saw.
Yeah, I was also thinking about this right now. Like, who do you think are some of the players from Laval? Do you think will be regulars for the Habs? Because right now, I think Yolonen. I think next season has to be a regular for the Habs because he plays a really good two-way
Oh.
game. I've noticed with the Habs, and also he has a really good shot on the power play. But I think he needs to work on his command of it. And Harvey Pinard, I'm not sure it'll be this or next season, but I think in the future he should be in the lineup for the Habs as more of a bottom six utility guy. Who are some players you think you'd expect to be in the NHL?
Yeah, Yolonen is really good too. He's a great skater. He's again quick, great hands, great shot. Does it all. Like great, like very defensive, like responsible defensively. Yeah, like I can see Yolonen next year. I can see Raphael Harvey Bernard hopefully next year. I think he's due. He's due to have a full-time spot on this team. The one bright side, I guess, is that the Habs have a lot of contracts coming off the paper this year, so there might be some room for those guys. Like there's going to be some roster spots available for some of these young guys that deserve to be there, right? So, um, yeah, like all in all, like I liked what I saw. Like there's potential. There's potential. I liked Nate Shinar looked pretty good as well. I'm gonna say him too. He looked pretty good. He had a good career with the Guelph Storm in the OHL. I remember hearing. I know he was. I think he was teammates with Nick Suzuki. I'm
Line
not
mates,
sure if they were
not only
line mates,
teammates.
but oh, they were line mates, eh?
Yeah, in
Shit,
the
there you go.
playoffs. Yeah, I
So,
got to see some of those games.
oh yeah, man, that's
Yeah,
awesome though.
they were
They
unreal together.
they that I know it's kind of a pipe dream, but it'd be cool to see them, on a line with the Habs, maybe in a preseason game, maybe we'll see.
Preseason, yeah.
Maybe, yeah. But no, I liked what I saw from him. He's again, he moves well too, and yeah, like again, I try to be positive, but I try to take the positives out of that game. There were a couple of bad turnovers here and there. One of them led to a goal. I think that pretty much like sealed the deal for the Marlies. But yeah, they played great. Like Harvey Pinard should hopefully by next season or again the next 2 years. I hope he makes the Habs roster. He totally deserves to be there. And yeah, I like what I saw from Laval, from the baby Habs, as they say.
Yeah, this is an interesting question right here from Paul Surratt. Where did the Habs go with Primo? Do you want to tackle this first, or should I?
Yeah, go ahead. I got to think about my answer.
Right now the way I see it is, I think Primo, he seems to play really well in the AHL, and he seems to play well at the NHL in very small sample sizes. When he gets 1 or 2 games in the NHL, from what I've seen so far, he seems to play really well and usually gets an above 900 save percentage, which is pretty good considering the Habs defense. And even last season when Ducharme was the coach, he still played well at the very beginning, but then it just got to a point when the defense was so bad, there wasn't really much that he could do. But I don't want to see a game of him this season, but I don't know how it'll happen because right now, with the back to back, I don't know if this was a shot at his confidence or anything. Because usually when there's a back to back, usually have Montembeau start one night and then Allen start the other night. But Allen's injured, and we had Montembeau play both back to backs in New York. So I was a little surprised that Primo didn't play. And I wonder maybe if the Habs know something else we don't know. But is still something very interesting to think about because I still could see him being an NHL goalie in the future.
Yeah, like with him, it's tough, man. He's definitely a good American Hockey League goalie. That's, it's been proven. And I don't know, like I just you got to think like, with the Habs goaltending situation with, obviously it looks like Carey Price is, his career is more than likely done. Um you got to think that, he's probably going to be playing on the roster soon maybe. I don't know. Like again, like you said, I agree with what you said too. Is where like again when he gets called up and he plays like little increments of games, maybe 1 or 2 games, and then gets sent back down and called back up. He plays well, right? So I don't know like it's really tough because I remember there was a lot of expectations for him, like 2018-19. I think it was 2019 when they like around the time when they drafted him, there was a lot of hype around him. And maybe again, goalies are really hard too. That's one thing I've talked to people like my friends and stuff that are like into hockey and stuff. Like goalies are just really hard. Like they can have a great season one year and then just, that's all, like, and they can be subpar the next. Like goalies are just really hard to predict. It's they're so unpredictable, right? So he can take a year in Laval and then he can just blossom in the NHL just randomly one year, right? Like it's hard to say. I think goalies are the most unpredictable position in the sport for sure.
I agree with that. Well said, Adrian. And also, there's this that is in the chat, and also Verbetic. I don't know if you know much about him,
Heard of him, yeah.
but I think he has potential too, as well as this comment from Zen Relax Unwind. He brings up a good point here, but I don't. Verbetic played really well for the North Bay last year, from what I saw, and I got to see some of his playoff games. Like there were some games that North Bay had no business winning against the 67s, but Verbetic stole them out those W's, and they were all 1 goal games that series, and it was a sweep for the North Bay Battalion. But Verbetic's also interesting. Like I think he's played 1 or 2 games in the AHL this year, and he's played pretty well. So I'm thinking that this creates some good competition in the Habs prospect pool for the goaltending aspect of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's always a good problem to have is when you have a goalie controversy. That's never a bad thing. Like, hey, they're probably going to compete, and we'll see. Because I think Primo's still gonna be a serviceable goalie, but again, like it's so hard with goalies though. They can just peak or blossom at like the most random times, right? And they're hard to develop because they can just blossom at like any time. They can blossom at like 30 years old, right? And then they can take like here's an example too, like Jack Campbell, played well. Like he was, a serviceable, backup goalie, maybe fringe starter, right? And then, he gets traded to the Leafs. He plays, impressive, right? So, I mean, now he's playing pretty bad now, but like the point being is like you just don't know guys can blossom and then, all of a sudden they can just fall off, right? Like goalies are just really hard. I find goalies are just the most impossible decision most impossible position to like to have solidified. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, that's a good point, Adrian. Also, one thing I do want to mention also when it comes to goalies, like I've noticed that when it comes to different World Junior teams that Canada's assembled, I've noticed that they've had certain undrafted goalies that have started or played in the tournament for them. Like you think Brett Brochu recently, and then you have other players who or Taylor Gauthier is another example, but he recently signed a contract with Pittsburgh. And then you look back at like Mark Byzantine and all those guys. Those guys at the time, like, and also I was pretty young. I thought maybe these guys are going to be starters, but a lot of them don't really turn into starters. I find a lot of it is sometimes the goalies who get missed from Team Canada's picks, or sometimes just different journeyman goalies sometimes who make it. Like Jack Campbell's the perfect example of a journeyman. Maybe not the most perfect, but he still has a good story because I think he was drafted 9th or 11th overall, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, he
And
was.
he wasn't even playing games at the ECHL level. That's how in a rough spot he was, but he worked really hard. And he even said Carey Price was his idol. And now he's playing games. He was proven starter last year with the Leafs and is playing games now with the Oilers. So it's pretty amazing to see how these stories go and unfold with a lot of young goalie prospects.
Yeah, man. One that really stuck to me was this past World Juniors. It was Milic, Thomas Milic, I think his name
Yeah,
was. It's Canada's goalie. Yeah. They said the TSN panel was like, he's undrafted. I was like, this guy is undrafted. I'm like, wow, like he played so stellar. That was honestly one of the best goaltending performances I've seen in like Team Canada, like World Junior history. I'm not gonna lie, he's up there like somewhere in like the top 5 because he was just stellar. And again, I was like so shocked that he didn't have an NHL contract. And the beauty of the World Juniors is just like it gives some of these kids exposure, right? If they they may not get drafted. Like again, Thomas Milch is an example. Like he's undrafted, and he's probably going to get a contract soon. I don't know when, but he definitely deserves one after the way he played. So the exposure for these guys is good.
I agree. And also, the funny thing is, now that you mentioned Milic, some interesting backtracking to the 2021 under 18. So the under 18s to start with are a very unique tournament because it's not always best on best to start with. Like Canada doesn't always send their best players, but the other countries do. And Canada usually finds a way to place 4th, 5th, or 6th in the tournament. And the one year in 2021, the COVID year, was the one year where there was somewhat more accuracy because the OHL wasn't playing games, the WHL was sending their players, but the QMJHL did play in a bubble. So it was pretty much the best WHL and QMJHL play. I mean, not QMJHL, WHL and OHL players who went. And Milik was actually the third string for Canada at that tournament. It was mainly Tyler Brennan. And then there was also Benjamin Gaudreau, who was supposed to start the tournament, but after that poor performance against Czechia in the first game, Milik just took that opportunity to take the net and then made the most of it. And even getting Canada this was a truly amazing experience to watch.
That was awesome, man. That was honestly like I didn't really watch the World Juniors that were in the summer last year. I just wasn't into it, like I'm just so traditional in a lot of ways. Like the World Juniors have to be on Boxing Day, like and like I just wasn't really, it was in the off season. I wasn't really as into it, right? So I was just because I haven't watched the World Juniors since like 2021 when I think it was when the US won the gold, and that was the last one I watched. So I was just like really fired up for the World Juniors this year. Um, but yeah, what was your take on the tournament? I want to hear your thoughts on Team Canada.
Oh, Team Canada,
That
like
tournament.
this team, I was really not really confused by it, but I thought, okay, like what kind of team are we going to go for here? And like Dennis Williams is a coach I've never really seen coach before, so I didn't really know what to expect because Canada's always been in a pattern where we pretty much starting from 2015, we usually win one year, then we either lose in the gold medal game or we get knocked out in the quarters, and then we've been continuing that pattern on and on. And then in the summer, I had a feeling if the winter one continued in 2022. But I mean, 2020, yeah, the 2022 tournament, if it never got COVID was never factored, never got canceled, I think Canada's winning that. But then when the summer ones came around, I was like, I'm in Greece, like I was on vacation, but I did want to keep up with that tournament.
Yeah.
And then like I couldn't watch the games, but I just kept up with the scores and we just saw it was pretty much a simple tournament that Bedard, Johnson, and McTavish pretty much took over, and Roy as well for the most part. But why this tournament was, I could get into him in a whole other video, but.
Huh.
And then when this tournament happened, I was pretty excited to see it because it was like Shane Wright, Connor Bedard, same team, and then you had Dylan Gunther, and then You had Brennan Othman and Wright. Othman and Clark were actually all teammates on the Dunsmore Flyers. And I actually remember, I don't know if you remember this, Agent, but we predicted this in our last post game video we did. We said that top six for Canada would be Bedard, Stankoven, and Roy would be one line, and then Wright, Othman, and Gunther would be another line. I remember they started off with Othman, Bedard, and Wright on the same line, and then Dennis Williams switched to my predicted top six, and then the
Oh,
magic
I
started
remember
happening in Canada. I don't know if you saw that post game video. Hopefully he did, but
that. Yeah, I do. Now that you say that, I remember. Yeah, we were talking about what their top six would look like. Sorry, top six, and yeah, man, it called it.
yeah,
It was good, man. It was, yeah. I mean, but this team Canada, like they just had something different this year. I don't know what it was, but like, man, they just had skill everywhere, And I remember the first game against Czechia when they lost, and there was just so many factors in that game like that just weren't going their way. Again, there was those waved off goals, and like just the Michigans. There's just too much going on, right? And there was too much of individual play. And again, I can tell they were just thrown off because like they got those two goals waved off, and they just were off their game, right? And I was like, oh man, that's not a good way to start off the tournament. But then slowly but surely they started like piecing it back, and just every game they just came back stronger. And Thomas Milic again just put up one of the best goaltending just performances I've ever seen in World Juniors, man. It was just insane. It was insane. I'm still like, sometimes I'm like, wow, like I still think about it. I'm just like, wow, that was a good tournament. And I'm so happy that I actually tuned in. I was like really craving the World Juniors this year, like I said, right? Because I didn't really watch um the summer one last year, and I didn't see the save by McTavish, which I'm still kicking myself about because that was like a Canadian heritage moment. But it is what it is. I seen it on the highlight films. It's good enough.
yeah. I have a funny story to tell you about that save. So I went to
Yeah,
bed that night in Greece because I couldn't watch the game over in Greece because of the time difference, and also cable. They don't have those channels. So I wake up in the morning. First thing I do is get on my phone, and then I look at my Instagram feed, and then I see that save in overtime. Thinking, wait, what? The game went to overtime? And I see, oh my God, McTavish just saved the gold medal right there. And then a few seconds later, Johnson to Stankoven and into the back of the net. Like that was like I sometimes I wish I was not in Greece and I was watching that very gold medal game, because that gold medal game, like they always save the best performance for last Canada. Or I don't mean the best like
yeah,
on nice performance, I mean the most entertaining game. Now Canada should have
agreed.
beat Finland in my opinion in that final a bit earlier, and the score should have been more lopsided, like it wasn't a preliminary round in that 2022 tournament that took place in the summer. But I think this game also against Czechia should have been decided earlier. And the one thing I do want to touch on with Canada is that bottom six. I feel like that bottom six was pretty versatile, and you don't just have good defensive forwards who kill penalties and match up against other teams' top players and wear them down. These guys were actually able to make a game-breaking play that could win. That could win a game. Like I want to give Zach Dean a shout out here. I'll say this: I was a little critical
Yeah,
of
it
him
was good.
because he was taking way too many penalties throughout the tournament, but he had so many game-breaking plays that nearly won us a lot of games. Like he scored. I mean, he nearly scored to make it 3-0 in that gold medal game, and against Slovakia. Like I'm gonna mention this against Slovakia, he nearly had a chance to win that game in regulation, but Slovakia deserved the better fate, in my opinion. Like they beat the US 6-3, which second time in history it's happened against the US. They've lost to Slovakia, and it always puts a big smile on my face. And sometimes I wonder if Slav went, how Slovakia would have did. Sometimes I wonder if they would have beat Canada or if they would have gotten a medal. Yeah, what do you think about it, Adrian?
Yeah, like that was a lot of people like were thinking that too. Like I was kind of surprised that they didn't let him go down, right? Because like the team wasn't, again, the Habs were starting to fall in the standings, and usually you'd think like, yeah, let him play in the World Juniors. And I was shocked that he didn't go, but I do respect the decisions of Marty St. Louis and the Habs brass. But yeah, if Slav was there, he would have definitely made a big impact. on team Slovakia. Probably could have gotten a bronze medal. Maybe, who knows, right? You just never know with it. It's a definitely a what if question. That's for sure.
Yeah, the thing is, I know Tony Marinaro has been big on saying that Slav should have gone, but I'm an advocate as I trust the new regime. But it's something that whether he should have gone, I think it's a question that we'll find out maybe 5 or 6 years down the road, depending on how well he's developed. And also, I think that for him to get better at the NHL level, he needs to play at the NHL level and adapt to those situations. He's trying to get better because he's trying to. I find nowadays on the ice, he's trying to cut more to the middle of the ice and create space there. But the defensemen are so big and strong in the NHL that they don't give you that, and they're so smart as well. And Slav has looked frustrated on the bench sometimes he's not able to do that, but it's something with the work and time I think will happen, and he just needs that NHL time to allow it to happen.
I agree. Making him, stay in, the North America to play, he would have had to like probably completely like adjust his game right to a new system, a new coach. Obviously, like going back to Slovakia for Team Slovakia there. But like you said, I think trust the regime, just trust the process, and like I have like there's been times where I'm like, maybe Slav should just, go to Laval and get his confidence back up. But you know, that may not even help him either, right? Because he's getting demoted, and in a sense, right? And it might hurt his confidence more, right? So I think personally, just trust the process. They're just gonna have to work with him a little extra, but he's again the upside's there. He played a good game. I think it was against Seattle last week. He was one of the best forwards on the ice for the Habs. So just trust the process, guys. With Slav, I see a lot of people on the internet that are already all like getting frustrated, but just trust the process, man. He's gonna be fine. Again, just trust the management there and the coaching staff. They're doing it properly this time. They actually have a player development department, so I have more faith, right? Yeah, I was honestly, Damon. What I remember that report came out after Bergevin got fired was that they did not they barely had any funding or any player development um, program with it, like internally, and I'm like, what? How? Like, how can you go that long without like having something like that? It's such a like modern way. A lot of teams do it, right? And that's how a lot of teams have had success. Like, in the last little stretch.
Yeah, when I saw that report, I was like, I'm surprised, but I'm not too surprised at the same time because we've had so many good players from the Pierre Gauthier regime and like even in the Bergevin regime. And I was thinking, okay, we have a lot of good prospects. I feel like they did draft well in those years, but we never gave those players the different tools they needed. And I think of the Kakaniemi, I don't know if you remember the Kakaniemi comments he made about his development where he said it could have been handled better. Bergevin came out with a quote after, and he said, "We assess all the players' games at different times, and we all give them the same tools." But I was thinking this: not every player needs the same tools. They need different tools to get better. Like you look at McCarron, he's still an NHL player, but he's pretty much a fourth liner at best. Like the way I
Yeah.
see it is, he could have been so much more, and he could have been a good number 2 or 3 C had he had all those tools available to him. And even Sherbak, this might be a hot take, but I think he could have been a really flashy winger if
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Totally agree.
if the Habs played their cards right and if they had a player development system. And even Beaulieu, I remember Dowdy actually had a quote about him where he was saying that he saw Beaulieu as a player with a really high ceiling. And Beaulieu's now a seventh defenseman in Anaheim. And then Tenorti is a big, strong shutdown defenseman, but there isn't really too much to his game right now. And he's in Chicago
Yeah.
right now, but there's still so many ifs and buts with that regime. Like I had a lot of confidence in their drafting, but their development just wasn't there. And sometimes I still wonder about it to say, like, what could these players have been? And then you look at a guy like Tage Thompson, who had a bit of a slower start to his career, but this year full on broke out. This might be a hot take, but I wonder if McCarron could have even been a slimmer or a shell of what Thompson is.
That's a yeah, that's a hot take as it gets,
Yeah.
I think McCarron though, like I don't know, I found Bergevin that year was just because the Habs got, slapped around physically that year. So Bergevin, that was his first like draft, his first like, or no, sorry, I lied. That was his second draft, but his first season with the team, right? And they got slapped around physically, like in that Ottawa series. They just got pounded, right? And he was trying to add toughness, right? Like I remember they went out and signed Douglas Murray that offseason.
He was
Oh
good against the
God.
Bruins though.
Yes, he was. I loved him against the Bruins. I think he hit Bergeron. He hit him pretty hard. I remember that. I was all fired up. I remember George Peros too. They traded for him, and it was which I don't really like George Peros, but that's a whole other topic. But yeah, man, he was just really obsessed with like getting toughness that year, and they I think McCarron was just like a reactionary move in the draft. I don't even think I remember hearing he wasn't even supposed to go that high. I think he was supposed to be like a second round pick,
I think
but
maybe early second.
yeah, that's what I heard too. But yeah, it was definitely a reactionary move because he was trying to address a need. But hey, it is what it is, right? And there's so many players, like you said, Nathan Beaulieu was like I remember back then had huge potential. We were talking about Galchenyuk before we hopped on here. Before Galchenyuk was another one who just fell through the pipes, and and Kotkaniemi. I even said from the beginning with Kotkaniemi though, like he should have played another year in Europe, at least another year, because you can tell he wasn't ready. Like his body wasn't he wasn't physically ready for the NHL. Just it's I just didn't understand that. I remember like the 2018-19 Habs, like their roster came out like, oh, third overall pick Kotkaniemi. I'm like, oh god, he's not ready, right? But I guess that comes with it, right? When you have a high draft pick like that, you're kind of like under pressure to like put them on the roster because everyone wants to see them play, right? So but still, I think Kotkaniemi wasn't ready, and it's unfortunate because the Habs had some decent players in that draft, like that time frame, like from 2012 to 2018 that they drafted, and all those first round picks from those years are gone, right? From 2012 to 2018, all those Habs first rounders are gone. So it's like it sucks because the drafting had potential, but just it seems like they weren't developing the players.
Yeah, and actually, now that you mentioned Kotkaniemi, the thing is, I thought he was at the time was a good pick because he was a center and we needed a center for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think either a year in Europe, like you said, or in the AHL could have benefited him. But the thing is also I'm wondering if Bergevin wanted to have him in the NHL first thing that year because he didn't have the strongest center depth that year. I remember I think the first center, yeah, was filled. The first line was the Tatar Gallagher Deneau line. And then he had Plekanec as the 2C. Then he had De La Rose as the 3C. And then Matthew Pekka as the 4C. And then I remember I think De La Rose fell out of favor with the Habs. And then they placed him on waivers and they made
St. Louis
Kotkaniemi.
grabbed them.
Yeah, St. Louis grabbed them. And then I think he played well over there. And he was traded for Robbie Fabry. And
Mm-hmm.
he's over in Europe now, Jacob De La Rose. And I think he also had a heart condition as well.
I did
Uh,
hear about that.
Yeah, so I just think that the Habs should have like Bergevin's are looking back, like the PTSD. I think it's important to address it that we should have been a lot more patient and we should have been a lot more aware of our developing and it just still boggles my mind that certain players that we felt through like this comment here. Sometimes I still can't believe we had Sergachev like Juleson. I will mention this. Juleson, I think played
Yeah,
well, but
Jolson.
like 90% of it was injuries.
Yeah, man. Juleson had so much potential, man. He was a good defenseman. It's just he just had the crappiest luck with injuries, and I felt so bad for him, man. He was always like again, like he had potential. I think he played with Team Canada like around that time when they drafted him, and he
Yeah.
looked stellar. Like he looked great, right? It's just he couldn't stay healthy, and it's unfortunate how things went, right? It's just man, it's a shame. But that and like instances like that where I think a player like Juleson would have actually turned out to be stellar. It's just he had bad luck, right? Galchenyuk, like we were talking about, and Kotkaniemi, like it's kind of 50-50. You got to blame the player for half of it, and you have to blame, the team for not developing the player at the same time, like, not developing the player. So that's another thing I get out of that. And Paling too. Paling was had a lot of, again, great potential. I love Paling. I was sad when they traded him, but you know, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So
I was sad as well, but I'm just happy that I think he's doing well in Pittsburgh and he's playing in a good bottom six role and he's getting to play with Sidney Crosby, which is what most kids would dream of now. And it's
oh
such a
yeah.
shame, like thinking about what Joel Bouchard did to him.
Yeah, man. That was yeah, that was something else, man. Like hearing all that inside info and how quickly the Habs distanced themselves from him right after the season. It was like, yeah, we don't want to keep you. I'm pretty sure that that episode was actually on RDS. I looked it up, and this channel made RDS, so that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, it's crazy how a player can have that much skill, but it takes one bad coach to just change everything. It's crazy. Like it sucks, but it happens, and not just in hockey. It happens in all sports, man. It happens in football. It happens just a player stuck in a bad system or in a bad time of the team, right? It just
Yeah.
sucks. Lucas,
And
yeah.
what
Oh my god, I haven't heard
Vegamo,
that guy's
yeah.
name.
Oh yeah,
I haven't
I
heard
think the
his name
Habs
in a
just
while.
never renewed his contract pretty much, but he
Yeah,
was
he
someone I
was.
also had some potential. I thought had potential, like to be an NHL player, and he did score 2 NHL goals. He scored one last year. Remember, Dale assisted his first NHL goal right before the entire league shut down because of COVID.
Yeah, he played pretty well back then. I remember he showed some strides of potential, but wherever he's at, I hope he's doing well.
Same
Yeah.
here, yeah. And also, I wanted to touch on the women's U18s
Yep.
because they deserve a lot more attention for what they did. And this tournament was absolutely amazing. The woman had a cakewalk pretty much. And someone in particular I need to give a shout out to is Caitlin Kramer. She's only 16 years old. And in this tournament, as a 16-year-old, she beat Marie-Philippe Poulin's goal record. Marie-Philippe Poulin's gold record in the tournament was 8. And Caitlin Kramer scored 10 goals and four goals in the gold medal game against Sweden. Like that is something that is absolutely amazing.
That's impressive. Yeah, man. That was like I was telling you, like I didn't get too much of a chance to watch the whole tournament. I kind of got glimpses of it, like highlights and whatnot. Um, you know, Canada just dominated, which is great. Great to see. Good for the girls there. Um, I saw one of them. I was on my TikTok. It was on my For You page earlier today, and one of them like had the like they one of them made a video with like the medal, and like the whole team was like cheering, and it was like the coolest thing ever. I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. So it was pretty cool. Congrats to them. And I also gotta talk about the Slovakian girl that made headlines in the hockey world. I'm trying to pronounce this properly. Nila Lopusanova. Lopusanova. Okay, I said it right.
Yeah.
I think I did. Man, she did the Michigan one game, and then she did another one where she was like on a partial breakaway, shot it, and then like the rebound was sitting in the air, and she just like batted it in like that. I was like, holy smokes! And then it was even crazier. And they said she was 14. I was like, what the hell? Like that's crazy. Like for someone to have a skill set like at that age, like, and she's playing against girls that are like, like you were saying, like before the show, we were talking about like 2-3 years older. Some of these are like 16, 17, right? And that's like a huge age gap. Like, holy smokes. It was cool, man. It was definitely good for the game, right?
Yeah. And also, now that we mentioned that she's playing in a Slovakian men's league, here's the interesting stat. She has a better points per game than Yuri Slavkovsky. Like, that is
Oh,
unreal. Like, that's amazing.
wow. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, she's definitely a prodigy. She'll be definitely like one of the top premier women's hockey players for years to come. And like another thing that I like too about that is like usually with that tournament, it's like Canada, USA that are always dominating, or like usually Canada, US, Sweden are the ones dominating in that tournament. It's good to see like someone from like like another country like Slovakia like have like a prodigy player like that. It's good to see like you know it's good for the game like worldwide.
Yeah, I agree, and that's one of the things I like, especially like those heartwarming stories of those players from other countries, the smaller countries that make their big names known, like you said. And the U.S. also it was also pretty interesting to see that they lost to Sweden in this tournament, because the U.S. every time going into this tournament has always gone to the gold medal game, and they've either won silver or they've gotten gold. This is the first ever tournament where they've ever won a bronze medal, and it
Oh
was pretty
wow.
nice to see that, because in the 2022 tournament, the one that took place in June, I'm pretty sure it was Canada USA, and that final was so intense. And even when we played the US this tournament, it was also ultra intense. But Canada had an easier time, had the US on their hands, and made much quicker work of them in this tournament than they did last tournament. But Jerome McGinley's daughter didn't play in this tournament, but the last tournament she was unreal. I don't know if you saw much of her Jerome McGinley's daughter play.
No, I actually haven't. I know his kids do play hockey. Like I've heard his kids are like making moves in the hockey world, but I actually haven't seen them play. I might need to look into seeing the highlights. I'm a little bit out of touch.
That's okay. But his daughter would not surprise me if she plays for the national women's team in a few years' time, or maybe like 5-10 years or something.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, man. Like that's cool though. Like I always find it really cool when like, former NHL players like when their kids are like their offspring are like, making moves in like hockey. Like it's just cool to see, like um I mean, geez, like so many like retired NHLers have like sons that are in the league now and they're like and I'm like, "Oh yeah, like I used to like there's so like a handful of players that are like that have dads that played and then like I see their name pop up, sorry. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I remember you." Like the other one was like Jason Blake. Like his son played for the US in the World Juniors and I'm like, "That's Jason Blake." And they showed him in the stands. I was like,
Yeah,
"Oh my god." I remember when I
yeah,
was like 9 years old when or like sorry like 11 years old when the like Jason Blake was like a star. I was like, wow, now his kids playing. Like I don't know if I'm old or he's old, I don't know.
yeah. And like also, you look at it now, like Marty's kids are playing hockey as well, and they're playing for Northeastern University. And Kent Hughes, I know he wasn't a former player, but he's an agent. I mean, former player, agent, and now our GM. His
Mhm.
kids also playing. Like, there's also like all the connection with the U.S. National Team Development Program, and then you have and then they're playing for the U.S. and you have Marty and Kent, who are pretty much Canadian.
Mhm.
And it's just amazing to see all those connections now in the hockey world, the way it's going.
Didn't Kent Hughes' son get drafted in the draft last year?
Oh yeah, he got drafted by LA, but Kent Hughes made it
Right.
clear that he wasn't going to draft his son.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
I remember
Conflict
that.
of
It's like, Dad, you're making a big mistake.
nepotism. I do remember that. I remember like Slavkovsky even said like a day before the draft, he's like, if like the Habs don't draft me, they're gonna like regret it or something. He's like, I'm gonna make sure I score against them every game. I was like, whoa, okay, dude. Like, whoa, man.
Or Shane Wright. Did you ever see that
Yeah.
NHL documentary they released?
Which one?
The draft. There's a draft documentary on the NHL's YouTube
Oh.
page. I think it was called Road to the
Mm.
NHL Entry Draft 2022. Like, they had different
Oh.
interviews with the different players before and after the draft, and they had Shane Wright on a microphone. And after he was passed up, like, he had that look where he's like, "I'm gonna kill you." Like, he looked so mad that, like, when he was like clapping, like fake clapping like this, like,
I remember, yeah, like you know what? The more I think of it, I think I saw clips of that, right? And like him and his dad was like propping him up and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's okay, like Montreal didn't pick you, like, Arizona, it's okay, Arizona." He's like, "Yeah, yeah, Arizona." And then they picked Logan Cooley. And then Shane Wright's just sitting there and he's like, "That hurt." That's all he said. And I was like,
yeah. And then
"Oh man, hey, whatever, man."
his dad said, I remember his dad said afterwards that it may not be where you get picked, but it's what you do after, which I think is a good thing to say as a parent to your son, like, in that situation. But as
True.
Shane Wright,
Yeah.
just like, it was really entertaining to see the way it went.
Hmm. Yeah, I was honestly again really shocked that he dropped that low, but then obviously all those reports came out after, and I was like, that could probably explain it, but yeah, so yeah, and so I wanted to switch gears for a second here, and we were talking about this. I think just reported by Jeff Merrick and Elliot Freeman on Saturday night. 32 thoughts. Yes, there we go. So apparently, Vejmelka, Nyquist, and Horvat are all on the trade block. If that's correct,
Yeah,
according
they
to
all are,
Goalie.
and those should be good. I don't know if they're going to be at the deadline or they should be before. And let's speculate a bit and have some fun with discussing where these guys are going to go, because I have a mock trade ready for Karel Vlameka. Some of you may like it, may not like it, but I think there's some truth to the way it could work. I'm not saying I 100% agree with it, but my early mock trade right now is Karel Vlameka to the Oilers, because he's on a really good contract, and the Oilers need a stable goaltender, because Campbell isn't really cutting it this year, and Stuart Skinner is not someone that an NHL team should be relying on to win them NHL games. Like, he's a good backup
Mhm.
Skinner, but just don't see him as a starter. The way I'm going to put this mock trade to go is the Oilers are going to move Jesse Puljujarvi to the Arizona Coyotes, and then they're going to trade one of Tyler Tullio or Raphael Lavoie, and then they're going to send the contracts of Oscar Klefbom and Mike Smith to Arizona to clear to feed them some dead cap. And I think that if that trade works out, Puljujarvi could sort of have what Nick Ritchie's having there in Arizona, somewhat having a bit of a resurgence there. Like, he's not going to be he's not going to top line player Ritchie or anything, or the player that we thought he was going to be. But I'd see if Puljujarvi goes out to Arizona and then just focuses on hockey and channels out a lot of the media attention that he's gotten in Edmonton. I think he could find himself a good middle six role there, and then he could eventually work his way back into maybe playing for a contender in the future. How do you feel about it, Adrian? That first mock trade?
Yeah, I think that's a good fit. Edmonton, again, unfortunately, like again, we were saying Jack Campbell's not really cutting it for this year for them. Mike Smith, I like how you brought that in there, Mike Smith. Oh, I have a lot of opinions about that man. But anyways, yeah, man, I think Jesse Puljujarvi just needs a change of scenery. It seems like, I don't know, like he's shown like again strides of potential that he has, but I don't know, it just doesn't. There seems to be like I don't know consistency. Like I don't know what it is, but it seems to not be a good fit. So maybe a resurgence and like a fresh start is not always a bad thing, right? So I think that would be a good fit for both. Again, that's a good trade for both teams because you're getting two good players on each ends, right? Like one guy that for in Arizona's perspective, you're trading a guy who you want to try and get assets for, and you're getting, and then if you're Edmonton, you're trading an asset, that's not really working out, but he can end up be blossoming in Arizona. Like um Arizona, if they keep, I know they're always kind of like the laughing stock of the NHL, but like if they just keep drafting well, like I mean, man, they have a lot of good young players, like and if they keep doing it, they're gonna be a good team in quite a few years. They're not gonna be like the laughing stock anymore because they just keep stockpiling those picks and prospects, and that they're gonna be a wagon. I don't know if anyone agrees with me, but I think Arizona will be a wagon in the next 5 years.
I think they could if they do a better job of developing those picks and prospects. And I also think they finally have more of a new school coach in Andre Tournier, because because I'm a 67s fan as well, and he used to coach at 67s, and he's one of those more new school coaches. And I remember they had Rick Tocchet there,
Mhm.
and with Rick Tocchet, he was much more one of those old school hockey coaches. But with Tournier, he like from what I've heard, and a lot of like players in 67 have said this, he never yells at his players, but he's one of those players who gives his player who he's one of those coaches who gives his players really good constructive criticism and tells them how they can get better, and he works with them and helping them become a lot better NHL players. And he's one of those more new school coaches that I feel is adapting to the game and to the way it's going, unlike a lot of other coaches who, like, you look at the recycle bin, it's like Tortorella and
Oh
all those kind of coaches, like they coach the
my
same way
god.
like you would in the 80s or 90s. Like, that's the thing with
Early
Arizona. I think the
2000s.
coaching, yeah, early 2000s, the coaching, I think, is if the Arizona Coyotes do well, I think it's going to be a lot on Tournier and the management there, but it depends on if they can move Jacob Chikrin, because they still want way too much for him.
Yeah, they've been trying to trade that guy for like the last I feel like the last 2 years. they've been trying to trade him, but like again, he's a great defenseman, but I just feel like like they just teams don't want to give up those kind of assets for like players. I find GMs are a little bit more like stingy nowadays with when it comes to like trading for players, like they don't want to give up too much assets, which I personally think is the best thing to do, right? Like you don't want to mortgage the future for, like a guy that, you may have for 2 years and then long term you're gonna be kind of duped, right? So um yeah, like I know like Chicharron's been like in trade rumors like I swear for like the last 2 years. I even think on our trade deadline show last year we talked about like teams that were interested in him and like he didn't even budge. Like I was like really shocked. And again, he's a guy that again top pairing defenseman logs up minutes, right? I'm surprised teams weren't like foaming at the mouth for it, but I guess like the market's kind of changed in a sense. I think that's a big part of it. Just GMs don't want to give up as much asset. Like they have to, right? You got to give up a lot to get a lot, but like they're a little bit more stingy with doing stuff like that now.
I agree. That's a well said point, Adrian. Also, like I'm gonna touch on what the Senators the
Mhm.
Senators actually right now they were trying to get Chikrin and they could barely even they pretty much hung up the phone right away after they heard what the asking price was. So the Sens wanted him and because he'll be a good fit on that team, and they pretty much wanted Shane Pinto and 2 firsts, and that's
Oh,
way too much for Chikrin. And
that's too much.
Chikrin also is pretty injury prone. So if I were a GM, I wouldn't go pay for that price. Like I may pay for a
Oh,
first and a good prospect, and if I'm able to sign him long term, but that price is just way too
yeah,
ridiculous.
I agree, man. Like you got to think like you want to at least be signing him long term if you're gonna give up that much assets, right? Because you're investing a lot, right? So yeah, I'm not sure, man. Shane Pinto, that's steep. But like for me, like personally, like yeah, like the Shane Pinto is steep. But like man, 2 first rounders though, my God, like that's a pretty steep asking price. And it was, I swear, like the same thing happened with Jack Eichel when the trade rumor started with him, right? Like Buffalo had this like insane asking price, and then teams were like, nope, we're not giving up this much, right? And eventually, Vegas got him, and personally, I think that trade's been great for both teams. I even said it from the start that it was good for both teams. But Alex Tuck just loves being a Saber. He's from there, and all the whole thing, right? The whole 9 yard, 10 yards. But yeah, man, I just think that the GMs, the market's kind of changed in that way. I noticed that.
Yeah, the markets now, and also like at the deadline, so many player values I found were pretty inflated. Like, you
Mm,
look at a lot of just names in the market. Like some of them, I felt like were really like a high value. Then Max Domi, I know he didn't have the best time in Columbus, especially because of Tortorella, and he straight up said that he didn't get along very well with Tortorella, and it was vice versa. They
mhm,
didn't have a good relationship. Like
mhm.
Max Domi barely even got them any return in the White. So I'm the one I think about this trade over and over. Domi is doing great out in Chicago, and I wonder if
Yeah,
Chicago's going to
he
use
is.
him as a trade deadline bait. Same with Andreas Athanasiou.
Yeah, I think so. Um, One thing I just thought about actually, Luke Richardson's coaching Chicago now, right? And Luke
Yeah,
Richardson and Domi were like doing like Richardson coached Domi in Montreal like 4 or 5 years ago, right? So you got to think maybe there was a connection there. And um, I was thinking, that like the more you say it, I was thinking about that today too. I was looking at Domi's stats, and I'm like, he's having a good season. He's already gonna surpass his last season totals, and it's like it probably like next month, and he's just having a great season. I think again, like Carolina, he was just a rental. It was kind of just like kind of get what you can out of him in the playoffs. Hopefully he plays well for you. But yeah, I know like Columbus, he had a pretty rough time there with Tortorella. They didn't really see eye to eye. He also didn't really see eye to eye with Claude Julien as well. But
yeah,
Max is like a really, yeah, he right after he got traded, he kind of spilled the beans on that. But yeah, man, he is a good player. I was I was kind of sad that they traded him. The Habs traded him 3 years ago, but I kind of saw it coming. You know, the writing was kind of on the wall, right? So he'll probably fetch you a first rounder. I think with the way he's playing right now, he'll get you a first rounder. If Brandon Hagel can get 2 first rounders, then I think Max Domi can get you a first. So like no, that's a no brainer.
Yeah, and I remember like that Max Domi trade at the time. Like at the time, I was really not happy because Anderson had a lot of injury issues and concerns there. And
Yeah,
Domi, I think the media was pretty hard on him that year. I still think he had a good
yeah,
statistical year, but just he couldn't find that right consistency. I remember there was like one streak then that season where I think he had 10 points in 5 games. Like, he was
yeah,
just on another level. But the other thing I also want to touch on, but like ever since Anderson came, I feel like Anderson was really good in that first season and then in the playoffs. But I find even in like the 2021-2022 season, there's been a lot of lack of consistency. But some nights I find Anderson can just take over games, and other nights times you just don't notice him.
yeah. Like he hasn't had a bad season this year. Yeah, like consistency at times has been like a kind of a question, but he's again he can single handedly like carry a game sometimes. Like he has the tools to just do it all, right? And that's why I was happy they like when Domi got traded that they got Josh Anderson. I knew what they were getting. I was like, I always liked Josh Anderson in Columbus before, so but I was still sad to see Domi go, right? But yeah, I don't know. Like I remember hearing last year there was rumors that like teams were interested in Josh Anderson and you know they were willing to give up like first rounders for him. And I'm surprised, you know, with the situation the team was in last year that they didn't you know, pull the trigger on that one.
Yeah, and sometimes I wonder if I go back and I think sometimes what were those offers and how would have those offers helped us now? And the way Anderson's playing, if we still get a good offer for him, I would just try to kind of take. I would just take it right now because I'm not sure he's going to be here when we next win the Stanley Cup. So I think we just kind of
Yeah,
have to invest more in the future now in Anderson. I don't want to say he's the past, but I think he's more of the present right now.
yeah,
But the present right now isn't winning Stanley Cup, so I think you just got to invest more in the future. And we still have good leaders on the team. I know Edmonton's likely gone, but he's still a good leader. Like Brendan Gallagher could also still be a good leader, even though all the injuries. Just circling back to him for a second, like
hmm,
this team still has a lasting effect that Shea Weber left on it with his leadership, and I think
hmm,
this team's going to have a very good culture in a few years. I mean, it still
absolutely,
has a good culture right now, but I think more of a winning culture.
for sure, for sure. They're definitely in the right spot right now. That's for sure. I wanted to keep going on the trade rumors here. We're also saying Gustav Nyquist and Bo Horvat. I can see Gustav Nyquist being like a guy, you know, who's a good top six, you know, a decent top or middle six guy. Probably trade a second. I don't know what his stats are. Actually, I'm kind of curious now.
I think Nyquist is like 18 points so far this season. I'll check right
Oh,
now if
that's
like,
not bad. Yeah,
but he's probably going to be a middle six scoring option on a team or a fourth line player.
yeah, yeah. He's got 18 points in 42 games. Yeah, he'll probably just be like a middle of the like, you know, second, third line guy. You know, you maybe trade a second or third for him. But again, he's again been a serviceable player in the league for a number of years now. So having him in a Stanley Cup run would be pretty good because he was always really good with Detroit back in the day. I used to love him in Detroit. He was
Ooh, yeah.
something else. Oh yeah, he was amazing. He'd be a good piece to have on your team if you're trying to make a pitch for the Stanley Cup there. And the last one here as well, Bo Horvat. We were talking about this. The Canucks announced that um, they've already given him an offer, and Jim Rutherford made some interesting comments today too about Bo Horvat, basically saying like what we offered him is like basically as good as he's been, and we're not going to go any higher. So like, I want
Not
to
point
try
per
and
game
pull
this
up.
year, so
Yeah,
they
he's
better
a
have given
point
him
per
what
game
Miller
player.
got.
What's that?
They better have given him what Miller got because in my opinion, he's been much better than Miller this year.
Oh God, yeah, he's been miles better than JT Miller. Let me see if I can pull up the exact quote because it was like when he said it, I was like, wow, that's kind of like I don't know if that's like disrespectful towards Bo Horvat, but like, damn, dude, I was like, what the hell? Oh man, where is this now? Sorry, guys, give me a second. Uh, shit. Yeah, I can't find it. But the the basically like the concept of the of his quote was that like he's basically we've offered him market value and like that's it. Which I think going like again we're gonna circle back to like the Canucks, but like that's like Bo Horvat's such a good two-way player and he's proved himself like year in and year out. Like he's your captain and everything. Like that's not how you treat your captain, man. Like I personally don't understand why they kept JT Miller over Bo Horvat. I think Bo Horvat's the better all-around player. I think Bo Horvat, oh my god, tongue twister. Bo Horvat's the better leader, you know. I think Bo Horvat just,
Also
you
younger.
know, yeah, younger too. Yeah. That's another thing too. He's 28, 27, sorry, 27, 28. JT Miller's 30, right? So you got a couple of years difference there. So it just I don't understand. Like I don't know why they just are kicking him to the curb like that. I just don't understand it. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes two
It
of us who don't understand it.
a lot of I've talked to Vancouver fans and they don't understand it either. So everyone's just in the same boat, man. It sucks. Like he's a good player, but hey, he'll be a trade piece at the deadline for sure. He'll be another one. Like I don't know if is he a Damon. Do you know if he's a free agent at the end of the season?
I think so. I'm gonna check Cap
Yeah.
Friendly right now. I'm
Okay.
positive he is.
So then he'll be a perfect rental for a
Yep,
team
he
again.
has 5.5 million on his contract,
Wow, that's
and he's
actually
a
really good.
yeah. The Canucks retain half of that. They can get a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, man, that's a good contract. Like that for what he's like playing like right now. Like if I'm not mistaken, he's got like almost 50 points already. If, I just checked before we hopped on earlier, but man, he's been dynamite. Let's see here. Yeah, he's got 30 goals this year. 48 points in 43 games. That's impressive.
Yeah,
Wow.
not an easy task to get 30 goals at this stage of the season. Like you have to be something really
Seriously.
special.
Yeah, man.
I
That's a
want to
good
fire
question.
this one with you.
Who's a
Yeah, who is it?
difficult
Oh,
move player that the Habs actually succeed in moving, if any? Armia, Hoffman, Drouin, Gallagher, Dadanov, Dvorak. That's a good question.
yeah.
Ooh, personally, Armia, like Armia's had a good stretch the last couple of games. He scored like a couple of goals here and there, but that contract seems unmovable. Hoffman might, again, a team that's looking for a power play guy might get something out of him.
Yeah, Hoffman's a bit of an investment though because he has another year after this.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Unless the
Yeah,
Habs retain some cap, right? That's the only way
yeah,
maybe a team would budge on it. Gallagher, I don't see Gallagher getting traded, but again, could be wrong. Right? You never know with the
yeah.
things these days. Dadanov, yeah, I don't know, man. Like some of these guys are just. It's
Mhm.
hard. I think Drouin, you can get like a decent. He's been playing better lately.
I think a
Um,
third round pick, mid round
yeah,
pick, or
you
something
could
for
probably get a
Druin.
third or middle round pick for him. Yeah, I think so. Dadanov, you probably get like a fifth or sixth. You know, Dvorak would probably get you a second.
I mean, I think
Dvorak, like,
Dvorak might be a bit more though.
yeah. I honestly though, I don't mind Dvorak. I think does like he's a really good face-off guy. And bless you.
Thank you.
No worries. Ev- Everyone kind of like sleeps on Dvorak like that. I think he's like a decent center. I think he does good things. Like like for what he's like doing out there, I think he's okay. He wins faceoffs and does some things right. He scored a hat trick this year, so that's pretty good. So
Yeah,
to
because I was
answer
gonna.
that, yeah, that's tough. Sorry, no,
I
Damon, go
was gonna
ahead,
say.
buddy. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say like for Dadonov, like I think Dadonov has been playing a bit better as of recently. I'll admit that. But I think
Mhm.
Dadonov and Druin are both gonna be like 50% retained and then just shipped out for a mid round pick.
Yeah, that's gonna be hard. Man, I don't know. Like, it's just like thinking about it too. Like, it really sucks with like everything that's happened to like Jonathan Drouin. Like I remember when they traded for him. Like, I was so hyped up for that trade, and like Like obviously like knew him from like the Halifax Mooseheads, and like obviously with Tampa, he like his last season in Tampa he had there before like he got traded. He had a good season. He had like over 50 points, and there was all that drama with him and the team, and it seemed to be kind of you know swept like water under the bridge per se. So I was really happy to see that trade. I mean, Sergachev, I was like, ooh, we got Drouin, and then I saw who he traded was Sergachev. I was like, ooh, that's bold, Bergevin. That's bold. That was my first thought, was bold trade, but it was a risk, and Berge took a risk when he had to, right? So needed help
Yeah,
up front.
Burge had big balls. I'll say that right on air. He had balls.
He did. Hey, you know what? Like I heard I heard someone say this on Twitter, and I kind of agree with it. Like, Bergevin was very polarizing, but at the end of the day, like, hey, he built a team that made the Stanley Cup Finals, right? So you gotta kind of put some respect on his name in some way, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Like the fact that he did all this without a player development system is what has me really intrigued.
yeah, that's the impressive part too. I found like Um, again, the Toffoli, like signing Toffoli was great. Like that off season, like that COVID off season, he did really well. Signing Toffoli, trading for Anderson, Edmondson, picked up a solid group of guys, and just yeah, they had a good season. I mean, they struggled at times during that year, but they made the playoffs, and playoffs are a whole new season, right? And the rest is history. So.
Yeah, looking back on that
Mhm.
season, I had a bit of a hot take that I thought we were going to go deep. I thought we were going to win the Canadian division that year, but as the season went along, I looked less and less likely, and I thought, okay, I probably just was overhyping the team. And then when he went on to win the Canadian division in the playoffs, I thought, oh my god, maybe like my preseason prediction was actually right. Like that was the
Yeah.
really interesting thing. Like looking back,
I remember thinking when the Habs went out, and like before this, like remember the NHL season ended in like late September, early October that year, which is weird because that's when the season starts, right? But because of the pandemic and all, it kind of had to change. But like I remember after was when Bergevin got really busy and started making trades and stuff like that. And I remember thinking like, wow, this is not a bad roster. And I'm like, I remember even thinking they can make some noise in the playoffs if they make the playoffs, right? And they did. So
yeah.
one of the best seasons, well, maybe the best season I've had as a Habs fan, maybe arguably I've experienced. Sorry, as a Habs fan, it was definitely the best or one of the best. So
Yeah, I think maybe regular season. I'll say this: I wasn't the biggest fan of the regular season, but that playoff run was the best I've ever seen.
yeah, the regular season they started off really good. I loved when like just Toffoli would played so good that year. Like he was my favorite
Oh,
player that year. He was just lighting it up. And Um, yeah, I was sad when they traded him. I remember like the whole Habs community was pretty sad, like everyone all over. But it was, they were in a different position, right? And it was kind of a given. But glad he's doing well in Calgary, and they're all doing well there. So
yeah, and looking back actually at the trade now that you mentioned it, like I think it's one of those trades right now that looks good for both teams because Toffoli's tearing it up there, and then now we have Philip Machar from that trade and Emil
oh yeah,
Heineman. But I think it could have been better at just relying on Tyler Pitlick's health, which was out of everyone's control. Because I thought Tyler Pitlick could have been a good fourth line player, a healthy scratch for the playoffs, but he wasn't healthy until after the deadline. Like that was
hmm
one unfortunate card we were dealt. But looking back, I think it was a really good trade for both teams.
absolutely, yeah. The fact that again, I remember when the trade went down and we got a first rounder. Right away, I was like, that's a win. That's a Kent Hughes W. So common Kent Hughes W. So
Yeah, Kent W. Hughes. We should
yeah,
call Kent Hughes. We should give him a middle name, Kent Winner Hughes.
that's right. I like I was like saying before, like pretty much every trade he's made has been like just stellar. Like stellar. Like I mean, like the Lekanen trade, like was good. Like they got decent value from him, right? But it wasn't like one of those trades where you're like, wow, like that was a steal. Kind of like with like the Kirby Doc trade, or something like along that lines, right? So,
Yeah, the Kirby Doc trade was. Well, I
oh,
was a little skeptical at first based on his injury history, but right now, Marty even called out the Blackhawks for giving up on him too early, and I think they did. The more I think about it, because of how much better he's become, and I'm wondering now sometimes if he should be a winger with the Habs or center, because right now I'm liking him so much on that line with Caulfield and Suzuki. But I
mhm.
think we also have other good center prospects in our system, so I don't think he really needs to play center for us the way I'm
Yeah,
seeing it at this moment.
he's very versatile at both positions, right? So, I remember like when the trade went down, like I stayed home and watched the first pick. And then after that, like my girlfriend and I went out to get ice cream. So I left the house and then we were just eating ice cream in my car. And I checked my phone and I see the dock trade. And I'm like, what? I was like, no way. I was like freaking out. I was like, let's go. And man, he was one of those guys that I wanted on the team since his draft year. Like, I just remember seeing this kid play and I was like, my God, he'd be a perfect fit on this team, right? And hey, 3 years later, ended up getting him. So there you go.
Yeah, it felt really nice to get him, but I think there's a piece of news we have to really get
Yes,
to. It's really tragic, but Gino Ojic, I don't know how to
Ochick.
say it.
Yes,
Ojic, okay,
Gino
hopefully I'm
Ochick.
saying his name
Yes.
right. Unfortunately, he
No, it's
passed away
okay.
at age 52. Yeah, he was a very, very popular player among the Vancouver Canucks organization, and he was a fan favorite. Like, I also have tonight would like to wish our condolences and where our thoughts and
Yes.
prayers are with the Ojic family at this moment. And yeah, it was really sad to hear.
Yeah, I'm just reading up on here too. He had a very rare like heart condition. I think it's cardiac amyloidosis, if I'm saying that properly.
I think yeah, a lot of those terms are pretty hard to pronounce.
Yeah, so he's battling this for a long time, and it's very sad. Like, when I heard the news last night, I was like, maybe feel a certain way, and it's a lot of people are dying these days. It's like really sad and very heartbreaking. A lot of people have like families and stuff, and you just don't like to see that stuff. So, again, on behalf of the channel, we wish his family our best wishes and our deepest condolences.
Yeah. Also, I think we're approaching the end of the show. Anything else you want to touch on, Adrian?
Um, One more thing. Robin Leonard, that he's pretty well known for making headlines in the hockey world at times.
Mhm.
But we're just gonna like touch up on this real quick. Like he like filed for like bankruptcy. Like apparently invested money in like a snake farm and he bought a bunch of like exotic snakes and um yeah, like that's just very unfortunate that something like that would happen. Like I always, when Robin Leonard came out a few years ago about like as an advocate for like mental health, I really started to like not cling to him, but like like I started to really like him and I liked his message and how he talked about his story. Um, and he's again, he's a very like good mental health advocate, and just you hate to see something like that happen to a guy. And he's just always been a battler, and he's just very well respected by a lot of people in the hockey world for being brave and speaking out and talking about what he's been through, and whatever happens here with him, like I just hope he gets it figured out, and like I just wish him all the best.
Well said, Adrian. Like, yeah, like Robin Lehner is someone I really like because he's one of the few hockey players who speaks out about mental health and in different situations that they're put in the NHL. And he in all the mental health he's been through, like it's like going through hell and back. And I'm just wishing the best for him as well, same as you and all of us here at the channel are wishing the best for Robin Lehner as well at this moment.
Yeah, I think we were talking about it too, Damon. I think he's been on the long term IR this year with an injury, right? So he hasn't played
Yeah.
much this year, and I hope we hope he's recovering well with that too. And yeah, Robin, we wish you nothing but the best, man, and hopefully everything gets sorted out. And hopefully, hopefully soon.
Yeah. And also, I want to thank everyone who tuned in and was spreading positivity and having good hockey talk in the chat. So I want to let you guys know to smash that like button. And don't forget,
Yes.
we have amazing merch. I will do this
So
every single time. Everyone,
yes,
we have
it's
a lot of good
ritual.
merch. We have
It's
some new
ritual.
shirts as well, and
Yes,
all of our merch is amazing, super comfortable.
love
And
it.
also this hat, I wear this all the time because
Yeah,
of how beautiful it
yeah.
is.
I
Yeah,
ordered some merch on Friday, guys. So whenever it comes in, I'll be wearing it on the show and doing it for the brand. So one more thing I wanted to say too is that with this new segment, this coast to coast segment, we're gonna try and do hopefully every Monday would be good. Do a live stream every Monday. Once a week would be good. Try to pump out as much content as we can. Sorry. And yeah, again, we're looking forward to this new chapter of Habs Tonight.
same here.
Yes.
Cheers.
All right, guys. Take care. Have a good night.